best place to hear your news, ERGT Radio. I'm Mike, your host. Thanks for joining us. Well, I know about 2 weeks ago I promised that we'd have a guest on the program. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond my control, he is still unable to join us for the broadcast, but we are still planning on having him sometime in the future on the program. Now, last week I had tried to record a broadcast for you regarding the situation in Ukraine and the vote that was going to occur over that weekend. Fortunately, I was not able to upload it to the website, so you did not get to hear that. I do apologize, but most of that broadcast is now a moot point since the election or the succession vote is now over. So I will advance past that, and we will talk about other issues going on in Ukraine. Well, the Ukrainians, obviously, in Crimea, the vote was passed, however you want to look at it, and Crimea has decided to secede from Ukraine. Now, the United States is, to be honest, I don't understand our foreign policy, and I bet most of you probably don't either. We warn the Russians, don't do this. They do it, nothing happens. We threaten them. Oh, well, we're going to move troops and aircraft and stuff into Poland if you don't back down. And Russians, they don't back down. So then what? Well, we're going to put sanctions on you. And the Russians were like, well, that's a big whoop. We warned most of our people to withdraw our U.S. assets, so your sanctions don't mean a hill of beans. Ooh, scary sanctions. And still, Russia continues to, if you want my opinion, invade part of Ukraine. And the United States has still not done anything about it, in a confrontational point. Now, there's two schools of thought to this. One is that we should be involved in Ukraine, and that we should get in there and stop the Russians. There's the other school of thought of we have no business being in Ukraine, and we shouldn't be involved in their internal struggles or their struggles with Russia. So which side are you on? You're probably going to ask, well, which side are you on, Mike? Well, I kind of have a mixed view on this, and here's why. The Ukrainians didn't necessarily ask for freedom, such as some different countries around the world have done in the past. When Georgia was invaded by the Russians, the Georgians were, wanting to join NATO, which so is Ukraine. But the Georgians really didn't have a huge internal struggle going on at that time. The Russians just moved in and pretty much wiped out the Georgian military, no problem. And that's similar to what could happen in Ukraine. But it hasn't quite happened that way. Ukraine had its own internal struggles. There is more geopolitical issues going on. If you look at a map, which I'll bring one up here, of Ukraine. Now, the eastern side of Ukraine is very pro-Russian. They speak mainly Russian. A majority of their people do. So, for them to identify with Russia is very easy. They speak the same language as we do, so they identify with them. Further you go west, that is not as true to where very few people speak Russian. Now, I'm not advocating that Ukraine should split its country like it happened in Czechoslovakia, and it became Slovakia and the Czech Republic, although that might be something that could have been put on the table. But what is my view on the Ukraine situation? Should we be involved? Well, we sent $1 billion of aid to Ukraine. Now, we send billions of dollars all over the world in aid, which I think we need to stop. We can't keep our own finances in order. So why should we be giving millions and billions of dollars to countries who, okay, they may need it, but now they have a dependence on us. They have dependence on our government. And I'm sorry, the US dollar is not what it used to be. So their dependence on us is slowly going to cause problems. Why? When the US dollar finally hits bottom, like another currency did back in time. If you remember the British pound, since the British owned most of the world, it was said the sun never sets on the British Empire. Now, where's the British Empire? Nothing. There is no British Empire. All of its colonies were liberated or made their own separate countries, from India to Australia to Canada. And that is what happened. Their pound, the British pound, which was used as the main currency in the world, bottomed out. Now nobody uses it. Well, that's probably what's going to happen to the US dollar. And all those countries that are depending on this aid, it's going to bring them down with us. So, first off, I think we need to stop supporting countries when our own country could use the money. $1 billion. Well, with 350 million odd citizens in the United States, if you took all the foreign aid, which let's estimate, okay, let's say it's $3.5 billion. I like easy math. Well, that is $10 for every American in the United States. Everyone, from a baby to the oldest citizen. $10. When you add all that up, that's a lot of money that they're just throwing away. What are we getting for this? We need to use it to pay, if you want to help another country, use it to pay for their goods. Maybe if you want to, quote, help the country, maybe pay a little bit more for those goods if you really want to help them. No, it's called trade. I think that'd be a good use of the money. You could help, and you could help your own country. Okay, well, let's get some goods from Ukraine. Their goods might not be as worth as much as we're paying for, but that money is going to be used to help them in their internal struggles. But we're getting something for it. Not, here's $1 billion. The United States government loves throwing money at things. Oh, we have an education problem? Let's throw money at it. Oh, we have a huge healthcare problem, which we didn't. Well, let's throw $1 trillion at it. It'll fix the problem. Yeah, it didn't fix any problems. It made things 10 times worse. Money doesn't solve the problem. Money causes more problems than it solves. If you think I'm off my rocker, money will solve problems. Most of those individuals that end up winning the lottery, all that money, they end up being worse off. They end up filing for bankruptcy. Why? Because the money didn't help them. They didn't need the money. So, flipping it back, went on a little rabbit trail there, but in Ukraine, that money was just thrown at them. What are they going to use all that money for? That was part of our help package. Now, I know we've moved military forces and stuff into Poland in preparation for anything we need to do. So should we be doing anything? Well, yes and no. Ukraine has been wanting to join NATO, which we are a part of. A lot of times the countries that want to join NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, they've been blocked. Georgia was one of them. Because Russia does not want a pro-American country right on its borders. And I've talked about this. It doesn't sit well, and the Russians are a powerful country. You may think that communism and the Soviet Union is dead. Well, it ain't dead, and the Russians are still a powerhouse. They still control nuclear weapons, and a lot of them. They can still destroy the world 10 times over. So can we. So, should we be helping Ukraine? Well, even though they wanted to join NATO and were denied, it is technically not our problem. They had an internal struggle. They should be left alone to figure out their own problems. Okay, we wanted to stick our hands in Syria, and officially we didn't. In Syria, there was mass murders and everything else. There wasn't that going on in Ukraine. Yeah, there were some deaths, there was some rioting, there was protesting, but it wasn't a full-out civil war. Yet we wanted to stick our hands in another cookie jar. The reason why a lot of people in the Middle East have problems with the United States is because we keep poking at them, telling them what to do, killing off leaders because they don't agree with us, and putting in somebody else who ends up being 10 times worse. Iran. Does that ring a bell to anybody? If you don't believe me, look it up. But Ukraine is going to resent us. because we keep poking at their situation. They need to be left alone to make their own decisions. Another thing, if we're going to get involved, we need to get involved. Think of it this way. Okay, there's two families down the street. Okay, they're having a property dispute. One family, we'll call it the Jones family, they think that this corner of the property should be theirs. The grass is it's the same kind of grass that's on that land. The fence is the same color that their fence was. So they think they should annex that portion of the Smith's yard. So there's disagreements, there's arguments, so they decided, no, well, we'll put a vote up. We'll see which way the wind blows on that end. Well, the wind blew over to the Jones yard, so the Jones annexed that section. Okay? We're down the street. We see all this going on. So we decide to walk over and, from the street, tell the Smiths what they should do, and tell the Jones that you don't need to be doing this. You don't need to be taking their yard. Is it any of our business? No, it's not any of our business. It's between the Smiths and the Jones. But we're like, well, if you don't give that yard back and let the Smiths keep that part of their yard, we're going to threaten to use force. We'll sick the block captain on you. Jones are like, whatever. And they put their foot on that side of the property where they've annexed to see what we do. Oh, well, if you don't get out of there, we're going to stop the mail that we give to you. We're going to put sanctions on you, not give you our food baskets that we give to all these other houses down the street. Jones just laughed, like, whatever. It's like, we weren't eating your food anyway. We don't need your support. We get enough food baskets from everyone else that we have in our back pocket. You don't mean anything. So now they stick a shed over there on that corner of the lot that they've just annexed from the Smiths. Okay? Now, you see the ridiculous of this in a common neighborhood idea. That is what is going on a world stage. The Jones being the Russians and the Smiths being Ukraine. If we're going to involve ourselves, we need to involve ourselves. What is worse? Staying out of it, minding your own business. Yeah, they may have asked for our help. They may not have. I know the interim prime minister or whatever of Ukraine came over to the White House to talk about things. And I know he's been getting advice from the former Georgian president or prime minister who had the Russians invade his country under his term and get some advice on how to deal with it and what to expect. But if we're just going to say, oh, well, don't do that. Okay, well, we'll not trade with you anymore, and we'll stop all our agreements with you. That doesn't mean anything. And the Russians have called their bluff over and over and over again. We have made ourselves, in this country, with our foreign policy, a joke. The world is laughing at us because we are not backing up what we say. Yeah, we've used our military in Iraq, Afghanistan. We've done stuff. But we're cutting our military down to the bone, into the bone. The Air Force is taking huge hits. The Army is taking huge hits. The Marines are being cut back. Yes, we're not involved in all these engagements around the world, but we're cutting ourselves to pre-World War II era, which we can't afford to be poking at ant piles and not be able to back it up. We've cut ourselves to nothing, but we keep poking at it. And the Russians are laughing, and everyone else that has a beef with us is laughing. Why? Because we're not standing up. Not to mock the president, but he is on the same level as Jimmy Carter during the Cold War. The Russians had no respect for Carter. He was a pushover. He gave away the Panama Canal, not sold it. We built it, and we gave it. Wasted billions of dollars. He was a pushover. The Russians enjoyed him as a president. Why? Because they knew they had nothing to worry about. What were the Russians scared of, or the Soviets, in the Cold War? What were they scared of? They were scared of Ronald Reagan. Why? In the whole election, they did not want him to win because he backed up what he said. He stood up and he said, this is how it's going to be. And one of the things that they looked back to history when the Russians came to visit the White House, Ronald Reagan, being as old as he was, it was really cold in Washington. The Russians came out of their car with heavy coats and a hat. Ronald Reagan came out of the White House without a jacket because he was a man's man. He had guts. He knew what the Russians were. He knew how to deal with them. Backing down and, okay, well, you'll end up getting it with a vote anyway, so don't worry about occupying it. You'll get it in legitimate means. No. Ronald Reagan said, no, this is how it is. Tear down this wall. Okay, that wasn't, well, if you guys want to, you guys can tear down the Berlin Wall. It would make things easier for everybody. No, Reagan said, tear it down. Where is that in our country? Where is that in the world? The leaders of the world are like that of World War II, pre-World War II. Well, Hitler, if you want to occupy Czechoslovakia, it's okay as long as you stop there. Okay, you can take Austria. That's okay. Just no more. You can take back the Rhineland. That's okay. Don't forget, you still got to pay us back, right? The outrageous sums that we made you pay and made you mad. You still got to do that. And finally, we stood up and said, okay, if you take Poland, we're going to do something. Hitler's been running all over us. Hitler's like, yeah, you haven't stopped me yet. Stalin goes over, hey, man, I'll split it with you. I'll help you attack from one side, you attack from the other, and we'll take it. Hitler's like, cool, sweet idea. I'd have to do half the work, and I get half the country. Sweet. And now I got a big ally with me. So he did. 2 days later, boom, World War II started. But he had already amassed so much because everybody just kind of, oh, it's okay. And that's exactly what our president is doing. We are the leader in the free world. I don't expect France to go up there to Ukraine and stand up. No, this is how it is. I'd be shocked to death. I may need to start making travel plans to go to France if that's the kind of leadership they had. But no, the free world has gotten soft, and we've let the tyrants of the world run amok. Oh yeah, we stuck our heads in Afghanistan and Iraq to, quote, fix problems. With mission creep and no clear end in sight, the war on terror, was there any full exact mission? Stop terrorism in the world, period. Okay, that's like eliminating every single criminal, ever. A little bit, and then there's another one. And then there's another one. And then there's another one. It's not going to stop. And we've just let this kind of problem fester in the world. We haven't fixed it. And the Russians have now occupied Crimea. They've taken over several Ukrainian bases. They took Ukraine's only sub. What are we going to do? We haven't stood up and done anything. Now, I'm not saying we should go and start nuking Russia. Okay, they have nuclear weapons, so you got to be careful how you deal with this. But you should have either stayed out of it completely, then you don't appear weak to everybody on the other side, or you do the Reagan thing and stand up and say, no, this is how it is, and if you mess with us, we're going to back it up. Why did the Cold War end? A lot of people contribute that to, okay, communism doesn't work. I'm sorry if that's a shock to anybody. The socialistic idea does not work. And the Russian economy failed. Why? Part of it was because Reagan upped our free market. We were producing more weapons, more tanks under a free system, and the Russians couldn't keep up. And they bankrupted themselves to try to keep even with us. And we won because we had a leader that would stand up. So I believe that now that we've keep sticking our foot in it, that either we need to completely retract everything we said, or we need to back it up and start doing something about it. Okay? If we have to, God forbid, put troops out there in Ukraine, if they ask for it, and stand up and say, no, Russia, this is it. If you want to go any farther, you're going to have to start a war. The people of the world would probably be shocked and a little alarmed that two big countries are now going at it, but it would also show our strength and our resolve to the entire world. Well, America actually means business. They're not just going to lay down and let somebody get run over. That would change a lot of things in the world stage. Russia wouldn't be doing this junk. So that's where I stand on that. Now, bridging off the leadership. What strong leaders do we have? Well, the socialists, yeah, they're Democrats, but I still call them socialists because most of their ideology is socialism. The takeover of the healthcare is a big proof of that. You look at the Republican Party. We have John Boehner. Ooh, the Democrats are really scared of him. Why? No, they're not scared of him. I don't know what's going on in the background. If somebody's padding somebody's pockets or making sure somebody keeps getting reelected, but he's given over to the Democrats every time. And he blames his own party for not standing up to the Democrats, for causing problems. He is another one of those pushovers. And he needs to be removed. People respect strength. They always have. Strength is what people look to. The Democrats aren't caving in. Why do they keep getting elected? Because they aren't backing down. Why are Republicans not blowing them away? These policies that the Democrats are pushing out are not good policies. They're not successful. They're not working. Why are they still getting in power? Because they're not compromising. They're not giving up. And when they do compromise, they're still winning. Well, I won't get all of what I wanted, but I'll still get some of it. The next time I'll get a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, until they got everything they wanted. It might take 10, 20, 30 years, but they'll get it all. Now, what are the Republicans doing? Well, we let them have a little bit of their stuff, but we still stopped it. No, we didn't. This whole credit increase thing, our national credit limit. Nobody in their right mind would do that. You can't keep the spending under control, and the Republicans gave them a freaking blank check. A blank one. Okay, yeah, you can just raise it to whatever you want. We're not going to even try to stop you or slow you down. We don't want another government shutdown because it looks bad on us. If y'all remember that episode, I actually talked about it. That all we had to do is it was going to hurt us more if we caved, and we did. So now we're not even fighting them anymore. Our Republican, quote, leadership in the House isn't. Now, I don't endorse candidates on the show. That's something I try not to do. But I look at two other Republicans that are kind of standing up. One of them is Rand Paul, the son of Ron Paul, who ran for president in the last election. That is one I supported. He lost, obviously, but he had a lot of dramatic changes in the government. It would have changed things around really significantly. And he would have been good for the country, a huge change than the disaster we have now. And Rand Paul holds the same policies. Now, another individual, which I've been a little cautious about Ted Cruz. But I'll have to give him something. He's standing up. And compared to leadership we have now, we could use a stand-up guy, not the little pushovers that we got now. People I don't like? Well, John Boehner would be number one on the list. John McCain would be another one. I don't know if it's a John thing. There's a reason why there's only one John in the King of England. But both of those guys I know, they're not conservatives. They never were conservatives. They are more moderate or liberal. In my opinion, they should have gone over to the Democratic Party and stayed there. Because if you're going to just let them win, you should stay over there. Then at least we could have a difference when we vote. Not, well, you got, I'm totally blue, or I'm light blue. No, there's blue and there's red. I won't make the independents purple. Perfect. Half blue, half red. So when it comes time to these next elections, I'm looking at Paul and Cruz because they're actually standing up for what they believe in. And it's very important to have good leaders like that. there's another one. I haven't heard too much about him, but when I lived in Florida, Jeff Miller. He's on every committee that has to do with veterans, the military, appropriations. He is on those, which if I were in Congress, that is probably the exact group of people I would be on. Those would be the boards I would be on, because that's what I care most about. The military will make or break the world. And right now, we're giving them the shaft, plain and simple. So when it comes time for these elections, I just recently got my voter's card for here in Alaska. Been waiting for it. When it comes time to vote, you need to look for the leaders, not the pushovers. Okay? I don't care if he is the most conservative guy on God's green earth. When push comes to shove, if he's willing to compromise and let things go, he is not good for this country. I would be, dangerous saying this, I would almost be more confident with a moderate that had some gumption than a pushover conservative. Why do people flock to people like Rush Limbaugh? Because he stands up for what he believes in. No matter what people say, he is still there. Whether you like him or not, he is still there. And I know a lot of people do. Some people that listen to this radio program do. People flock to leadership. People who stand up for what they believe in. They don't compromise. They don't give in to the other side when things get tough. They endure the ridicule. They accept their mistakes. They admit their mistakes. They learn from them and move on. That is true leadership, and that is something we have lacked in this country for a long time. Well, I'd like to thank you all for listening to the broadcast this week. Again, we are still looking forward to our guests joining us sometime in the near future. I don't have an exact date, but I'm looking forward to him coming on the program. I'm sure you guys will have a good experience and learn a lot from him. If you have any questions for my special guest in the future, you can still email me at miked@erttradio.com. That is miked@erttradio.com. Or if you have any other questions, shoot me an email. There's also the new gun section, weapon section. I posted some questions that somebody had for me about certain firearms. Be sure to look at that. And for more news coming on that tab here in the future. And remember, look for your leaders. And as always, live free and die free.